Thank you. Good morning. I'm extremely honored to have you, CP, here. And beyond all his accomplishments, and we are going to talk about his transformative journey, but he's also a Northeastern parent. And so thank you for being a Northeastern parent, and thank you for spending your time here.
Thank you for having me here, and good morning, everybody.
Perfect. So I wanted to start off. Earlier, people would say face is index to the soul, and nowadays with no face-to-face meetings and everything going virtual, I've been following your tweets. You are a very active tweeter. And one of the things that I loved about you was the fact that in the first line it says, mad about meeting people. That's your tagline, you know. CP Gurani, mad about meeting people, which actually struck me, but there is a question here. But you grew up in a variety of small towns in central India and go on, as the president said, with an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. And then now you are the leader of one of the top technology companies in the world, and you've been acclaimed to be a top global CEO and so on. So I want you to trace for us your formative years, the lessons that you learned, your engineering background, and how it has actually transformed into you becoming the leader that you are today.
Again, thank you, Dean, and it's always an honor meeting President Down. And I'm going to change my tagline, thanks to you.
Okay.
Because as I said, I learned from President Down.
Yeah.
President Down had a few prospective students here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to now start saying mad about meeting prospective customers and people.
Okay.
So, yeah, clearly, I wish it was not my son who went to Northeastern. I had the privilege of going to Northeastern. And as the chairman of the board of trustees said, I mean, the institute has been there for 100 years. I don't know whether Rich has been here for 100 years or not. Right? So clearly, when you look back, I graduated in '81, and Rich was not very forthcoming with his accomplishments or age.
Yeah.
So I can only say is that when I graduated in '81, I was a chemical engineer. I grew up in a small town, and I went to an engineering school which was a steel city. So it was literally like going into one big steel town called Rourkela. And between the town that I grew up in, Rajasthan, Chittorgarh, only way to reach Rourkela was 26 hours of train journey. So that is the first time I realized at times journey is more important than the destination.
Fantastic.
Right? Because those 26 hours, I have a book for every journey that I took.
Yeah.
The second part is that exposure was very limited. 1/3 of the class wanted to get into what in India is called an IAS, which is the civil services.
Right.
1/3 of the class wanted to go abroad one way or the other. It didn't matter if it meant, selling your mother's jewelry. Right? And so I don't know how you landed up there, Raj, but...
No, not selling mother's jewelry. My father's rings.
And 1/3 were people like me who didn't know where we were going, right? So now, fast forward today's environment. In today's environment, almost everybody, at least both my children studied in the United States. When I look at what they knew or what they could ask for help, I mean, is a lot different. So in my case, my son was very clear. He wanted to do all the 3 co-ops because it's probably helped him being on my payroll for a longer time. Right?
Right.
So he ended up doing 3 co-ops. One was an insurance company. One was in a technology company. And third was again in technology company, but with Amazon, which was in data and retail. And frankly, it is in his 3rd co-op, he realized this is what his career is going to be. Now, the best part is when he graduated in 2014, he ended up working for Amazon And after a year, he and his other Northeastern friend, both of them started their own business, and they are part of your Global Business Leader program.
Right.
Now, take this lens in 81. I did the same thing, but I took 4 years by switching 4 jobs. Right? I mean, I went to a company called JK Synthetics, which was in chemical engineering. In 6 months, I said, I can't have a career which keeps looking at this big dashboard, or, in those days you may call it a control room,
Right.
and wait for a red light to come out, because when the red light happens, then that's the only time an engineer and me has to switch. Pump 1 is failing and pump 2 has to be started. If pump 2 has also failed, then pump 3 has to be started, because the redundancy was built at every level. And I said, thank you very much. I'm not going to, make a career out of switching pumps. Right? And so over a period of time, I did realize meeting people was my passion, and which President Aoun will call it as human engineering.
Right.
So chemical engineering plus human engineering started happening somewhere. And then the third is a little bit of research also told me which technology to bet on. So I ended up betting on, then in 86, that is the time when the PCs were becoming a reality. And in my college education, there was nothing called computer science. I mean, frankly, I couldn't even differentiate between the front end or a back end of a computer. So in 86, when I said, no, I am going to now ride the technology wave, I only tell you is that I had to do it by experimentation. And I'm so glad when President Aoun was talking about humanics, because to me that was music, and I wish in 81 I knew about it.
Very nice. And you bet on technology. One of the interesting things is, and this is a topic for another day, one of the fascinating things was that you actually chose your boss in Perot Systems, correct? which was very interesting. But one of the, Marina introduced you, and when she introduced, she talked about Satyam. For those of you who are not aware of this, Satyam Computers was a phenomenal company backed by a house with a lot of reputation. All of a sudden in 2009, say that they falsified data, and there was a problem. There was a reputational problem all over the world and so on. And Mahindra's take over Satyam, and not only that, the acquisition is considered to be a guiding model for acquisition, etc. So my question to you, CP, is how did you choose to get into that? It was an impaired asset at that point in time. But more importantly, how did you, because there were lots of stakeholders to manage within Satyam, within Mahindra's, and within the Indian ecosystem, and more importantly, the reputation of India, frankly, at a very large level. So how did you make this success so successful, and more importantly, what are your lessons when you go into transformational change like that?
A fairly critical question, and most of you are aware of Enron in US, and some of you who were in India, Satyam was called Enron of India. So in a situation where, when an asset is distressed, the same time in America, US Lehman Brothers collapsed, and in a free economy, US decided to let it collapse. I think the difference here was that it was a Lord's year of 2009, and the government of India did realize that a collapse of an institution means redundant jobs. And those 50,000 people coming in when the 2009 economy wasn't doing all that great would have impacted India's reputation as a software supplier, and number two, that it would have hurt 50,000 families. So the government of India decided that they will appoint a board which will run this company. And number two, they provided immunity to the board against whatever action they would take. So now they did not put any finances. Uh, the reason I'm bringing this to your notice is because you have to take into background that it's not that the board knew what was happening to the company. It was a distressed asset, it was a damaged asset, and the data room could not have been made where all information would be made available, because remember there was not enough time to do forensics, and there was not enough time to create a proper data room for an acquisition. So a lot of decision making of why Mahindra Group would acquire Satyam was based on primary and secondary intelligence. And that primary and secondary intelligence, when you combine it together, we took a decision that it is a calculated risk. Now, one part is to take a calculated risk and you buy in an auction. It was a public auction, and another company in India called L&T. There was another company, which was, a hedge fund which was run by Wilbur Ross, who is the now Secretary Wilbur Ross. And these companies competed, and yes, we won the auction. Now, to say that we knew what that result would be, I think it was a complicated answer. The second part of it is that I, as the first CEO into that company, knew that I am going to be fighting a lot of battles. Battle of people, number one, because I had to give them hope, I had to give them motivation, motivate them that tomorrow would be great without knowing tomorrow would be great or not.
Right.
The second part was about customers, because at the end of the day, we were handling customer problems. And in service industry, I would like to say that when a customer gives you something to do, he actually wants to sleep well. He is giving away his risk to you, so that when the next morning when he gets up, or next month when he wants to deliver to his customers, his end customers, he has got a proper solution. So now you have a second variable, which is customer, which you would say is a normal business. The variables that started coming in is open litigations, investigations by every government agency possible, and so on and so forth. I think the only thing I can say when I look back, number one was being transparent with your own management team and being able to share it, what was going on and how would we address it, I think worked like a wonder. Because, if I have to recreate my life, I'll rather create that war room, because suddenly the sense of purpose of the organization was so dramatically different. Today, even if I go back and say tomorrow there is a coronavirus and we need to roll up our sleeves, somehow it looks very distant.
Right.
I mean, it is somewhere in China. Why am I getting so paranoid? If there is a stock market crash somewhere, it is happening in New York. Why are you worried? But when it is happening in your own organization, I promise you, if you are able to communicate, if you are able to make them the stakeholders, and if you are able to show a level of confidence that tomorrow would be better, I think it works like magic. So if there is a lesson for me, it was the war room in actual war works like magic.